Good afternoon. My name is Lene Jackson Orange, and we welcome you to our multimedia capstone at School of Journalism and Mass Communication. This is a grant-funded project about sea level rise and its effects on the community. We worked with community partners, and the website associated with our project is eyesontherise.org. What you will see today are some of the first of the packages for this project. Each package will be presented individually. So we will turn our attention to our first presenter, who will talk to us about more on the project. Her name is Analia Fiestas. So, Analia.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Analia Fiestas, and I work with Antonella Nagfor on our project. And sea level rise in South Florida is a problem. We all know that, that's why we're here. And because of that, we also developed this program, this project. And in doing so, we had the community on mind because we wanted to do something different. We didn't just want to report on issues about sea level rise because anyone can do that, but we also wanted to incorporate residents and citizens and students and anyone that lives in South Florida. So to do that, we came up with this project. And my partner and I worked on a video that showcases truly what this project is about. We spoke to residents in South Florida who actually told us how they felt about the initiative that we're taking. We spoke to the mayor of South Miami who told us about the problems of sea level rise in South Florida and why it's important to raise awareness. We also spoke to Professor Pinto, who described to us in more detail what the project is about, what students can expect, what residents can expect as well. And we talked to other people that you will see in the video. Through this video, we try to do three factors. We try to focus on three factors. The first one was branding. We believe that the more we talk about FIU and about eyesontherise.org, the more people will remember us and the more people will know that we exist, that we're doing something to the community, and that we're working on something that's important. We also focus on transparency. We believe that it's very important as journalists to let the residents know exactly what it is that we're doing, so much to the point that we actually put a budget on our website that shows where the money from this grant is going to in all the different portions of the program so that people can see, okay, this is what they're doing with this money. So we can trust these people. We want to build credibility in our community. And last but not least, those two factors lead into our curriculum, which we think it's the most important thing here because we are doing something so different. I don't believe that a lot of students in schools of journalism and mass communication around South Florida are doing what we're doing, not only reporting the news from the outside in, but more from the inside out, right? And getting those people involved, wanting to hear their stories. What do you have to say? What can we do for you? And I think in that way, we have developed and changed our curriculum, and I think that's very important to do. So all of that being said, I would like to now show you the video that Antonella and I worked on.
According to a recent national climate assessment released by the White House, Miami is one of the most vulnerable cities to be affected by sea level rise. As sea levels continue to rise, South Florida might end up underwater. The School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Florida International University received the Challenge Fund for $35,000 in early 2014. Thanks to those funds, journalism students are developing a community-involved project called Sea Level Rise South Florida.
The Eyes on the Rise project is a project that we proposed for a grant that was funded by a consortium of journalism organizations and foundations that were interested in hacking the journalism curriculum and coming up with really innovative ways to engage communities and students, you know, in the dawn of a new journalistic era.
Its mission is to raise awareness and educate South Florida communities about the impact, challenges, and threats of sea level rise to create possible solutions for a sustainable future.
Professor Gucci has centered his senior multimedia capstone course around the Eyes on the Rise project, and he's having his students investigate issues and do their final multimedia projects around sea level rise and related issues.
What FIU really wants is to get South Florida residents involved by participating in reader boards, posting articles, and even downloading the project's app.
I think it's a good idea, people helping, getting together, trying to help the community.
Working together with one another
and coming together with the same concerns. The citizens, after all, are the ones impacted by flooding.
When I used to go to school, high school, and get on the bus, it would always be flooded. We would have to pretty much stand in water that's almost knee-high to get into the bus.
Because South Florida's ground is so low, it's prone to floods, and all that flooding, it's increasing residents' insurance and property costs.
What's going to happen with flood insurance? Right now my family pays less than $500 a year for flood insurance. Those prices are going to go up. And as the flood insurance prices rise for those of us who live in potentially floodable areas, that's less we can afford for other things in our life. So effectively, our property values are necessarily going to go down. That's an inevitable consequence. How fast is that going to happen? I can't tell you.
That is why students at FIU are working on story ideas, project possibilities, and community events, with the hopes of getting as many people involved in the challenging journey.
Where we're going to visualize sea level rise, and we're going to tell the stories of sea level rise by people experiencing it on the ground here in South Florida.
The project's success depends on reaching important goals: improving curriculum, increasing collaboration, building community, conducting measurement, and securing sustainability.
What we really want at the end of the day is that our community better understands this issue, that our students are better able to communicate these tough, complex issues that might not be the sexiest, but are very, very important, particularly, for example, sea level rise in South Florida.
I think that's great that somebody is interested in, everyday people, what they're going through.
To get involved with this project, visit eyesontherise.org. I'm Antonella Nakfur in Miami.
So I would like to highlight that very last soundbite that you watched, where the woman says, "Wow, I am so happy that someone cares about everyday people." Because to me and to my partners, that soundbite was so strong because it shows that what we're doing is actually working. People are actually feeling appreciated, they are wanting to participate, and they are thankful that journalists in the making are trying to make a difference in their community by listening to them. So to me, that soundbite was really strong. So I wanted to highlight that to you. And our video has 3 audiences. We wanted to target 3 different groups. One, of course, the residents of South Florida. They are the ones who will know more about the project by watching this video. Second, the donors, the several organizations that have given us the money, because they will know that we're doing something productive with the money that they gave us. It's not just sitting there, we're doing something big, and we have lots of goals for the future. And last but not least, the journalists in South Florida, different stations, radio channels, because I want them to see what we're doing as a group. These are journalists in the making. What are they doing? They could even get story ideas from us because we do have a budget list on our website. They could see all the projects that we're working on, all the ideas that we have, or the fact that we're actually teaming up and doing something for the community about sea level rise could be a story of its own for any journalist interested in South Florida. So those were the audiences that we were trying to target. And with all that, now I would like to introduce Amanda to you, who will talk more about the actual issue of flooding and sea level rise in South Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella, and thank you for being here. My name is Amanda Guevara. My partner is Mariana Alzate. Many members of the Miami-Dade community don't realize that sea level rise is affecting them now. As you saw in the previous video, flooding is a consequence of not being adequately prepared for sea level rise. Our mission, being Eyes on the Rise, was to create an environment of collaborative journalism through education by means of crowd hydrology and citizen science. So basically, we'd like to give citizens the opportunity to explore, explain, and understand their environment in a collaborative effort with FIU through sourcing images and data related to water and using sensors and other technologies that we will provide at a later time.
Miami is threatened by an unstoppable force that is unwilling to negotiate. It preys on low-lying coastal habits, drowning all life in its path. This steadily encroaching threat is sea level rise.
What exactly is sea level rise and what's all this fuss about? Let's find out. Okay, sea level rise is the expansion of the ocean by warming of the water caused by climate change, and it is also caused by the melting of the ice on the great ice sheets.
Sea level rise has been actually going on for the last at least 10,000 years. It's accelerating now, and that's why we're concerned about it.
Rising sea level threatens trillions of dollars of development, South Florida's freshwater supply, natural resources, agriculture, ecosystems, and so much more, according to the Miami-Dade Sea Level Rise Task Force. So what can we do?
Number one important thing to do is find out how high your property is, and that way you know where you are in this whole story. I think we need to just pay attention to this subject, learn as much as you can about it, and figure out how it affects you personally, and also think about a lot about what kind of future community you want to live in.
Miami's future looks soggy, to say the least. My best advice would be to invest in a pair of these.
So that video basically was to explain what sea level rise is, how it's happening, why it's a problem, and what we can do about it now. The next video we created is just 10 facts about sea level rise. So we basically wanted to give a simple explanation to a more complex issue. So our next video.
It can be hard trying to figure out what to believe about sea level rise with so many contradicting reports. Not to mention scary, as news outlets report apocalyptic scenarios for coastal areas like our very own Miami.
Don't panic. We've gathered 10 facts that cover everything you need to know about sea level rise.
Sea level rise is happening. Period. Scientists think global warming is responsible for increasing sea levels.
Coastal areas at or just above sea level are especially vulnerable to being engulfed by rising ocean waters. Like Miami, for example, that sits less than 4 feet above sea level.
The effects of sea level rise can already be seen in Miami Beach. Saltwater pushes up from drains and flood streets after weeks of no rain. Saltwater intrusion due to sea level rise will contaminate freshwater supplies. Cities along the Gulf and Atlantic coasts of the U.S. are not ready for sea level rise, including Miami. Florida state representatives won't even acknowledge global warming. Taxes will have to be heavily increased to fund preventative projects for a sustainable future. Sea levels are estimated to rise between 2.5 to 6 feet by 2100, the latter being more likely. Sea level rise will force hundreds of thousands of people to move, and that's just in Miami alone. Sea level rise is inevitable.
Visit Eyes on the Rise to learn more about sea level rise and how your community will be affected.
So the goal for Eyes on the Rise is basically to create an environment for collaborative journalism. We'd like to combine our classrooms with our communities, and we also hope to produce a replicable model of citizen-engaged journalism so that other communities can use our same model to address their own specific needs related to sea level rise. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Ann Ferguson. My partners were Karina Gandillian and Garfield Williams. Now, understanding how sea level rise can affect citizens in their everyday lives is an important aspect to explanatory journalism, being that explanatory journalism tends to be citizen-driven and more community-focused. Earlier in the semester, we got to Skype in with Jennifer Hemmingson at the Gazette in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and she shared some ideas with us and gave us insight on different ways that we can involve our community with our journalism. And with that being said, the topic of septic tanks is one of many issues that can be related to sea level rise that many people are unaware of, especially those who own septic tanks. And in our piece that you're about to watch, we discuss what septic tanks are, how they work, and why it's important for citizens to be knowledgeable and engaged.
We often don't think of septic tanks as important, but as sea level rises, they're becoming more vulnerable and threatening our public health.
Basically, a septic tank is a trap for the solids from the house. Okay, you have the water that leaves from the house, goes into the tank. The tank forms a trap that keeps the solids from the house in the tank, and then you have effluent, which is like the black water that goes into the drain field. So tank is supposed to be watertight, so you should not have infiltration from flooding. But what happens is that water that goes into the drain field eventually goes into the water table. So if the water table rises, then the water has nowhere to go, and you can have backups. So if you're in a low-lying area, you can have problems. Properties that are in higher elevation areas usually don't have a problem.
If your system is inclined to flooding, it'll stop the flow of water, and you just have to wait until the water subsides. The health department requires raising the level of the drain field in low-lying areas. To protect the water table, you have to put in a lift station that pumps the water up to the higher elevation of the drain field.
We tend to be like an emergency service. When people call us, the toilets ain't flushing, and that's no fun.
Sea level rise is inevitable and dramatically accelerating, especially here in South Florida. Septic tank failure is just one of the many consequences of these rising sea levels. According to the Sea Level Rise Task Force report, it will threaten trillions of dollars of our region's built environment, future water supply, natural resources, and basic economy.
Okay, now that you have a better understanding of how septic tanks work, Virginia will elaborate on the policies and practices related to septic tanks in the Miami Gardens area.
Thank you, Tony Ann. My name is Virginia Torres, and my partner was Lene Jackson Orange, and our project was on how sea level rise affects septic tanks in Miami Gardens. Miami Gardens is a city that's often depicted as poor and dangerous in the media, with around a population of 110,000, 79% of them being Black. We explore in this video the future policy and practices that lie ahead in the future for this community.
Septic tank structures are in danger as sea level continues to rise. With 654 septic tanks in Miami Gardens, Florida, which is located in the north central part of Miami-Dade County, midway between Fort Lauderdale and Miami, this poses a problem for residents and the environment because septic tanks will not be able to hold waste. Although it's only 2% of households in Miami Gardens using septic tanks, 1/3 of all Florida homes, about 1.6 million households, use septic tanks. Chris James, who's lived in Miami Gardens for over 10 years, feels that septic tank owners should be connected to the nearby central sewage system.
From what I know a septic tank to be, it definitely can be affected. So in some aspects, I feel like there should be something done, either allowing people to connect to the main lines or, something that is helpful to the environment.
The average size septic tank for a house can hold up to 1,000 gallons. According to the Broward County website, septic tanks store heavier solid waste while separating the liquids and lighter solids. These liquids are sent out into the drain field or ground soil, where the soil filters it as it makes its way to the groundwater below the soil, which then gets pumped by septic tank cleaners. But as sea level rises, the soil could become so saturated that the soil can no longer absorb any additional liquid waste from the septic tank, meaning the yard will be filled with standing liquid waste. Additionally, the salt from saltwater intrusion will eventually corrode the septic tank, and the tank will become so brittle and damaged it can no longer contain the waste.
We have an Achilles heel, that's our substrata, a very porous limestone, so that everything below the surface area of our land is going to get more exposed to saltwater infiltration.
However, Miami-Dade County officials have a possible solution to this problem.
It may be that septic tanks will be one of those elements that have to be changed, and we've got to abandon septic tanks and tie in more to regional and countywide sewage systems.
Because of the cost of maintaining a septic tank, James Houston, who's lived in Miami Gardens since the 1950s, feels that it would be more cost-effective for residents to be connected to the central sewage system.
Septic tanks is hard to keep up. Costs a lot of money to keep pumping them out, you know.
But Miami Gardens Public Works Director Tom Ruiz feels that connecting to a central sewage system is easier said than done.
It's not just bringing in the sewer lines. It's also the homeowner has to pay for the connection from the house to the lateral sewer line that's being put in. So it's a big expense all around.
Ruiz plans to connect a smaller commercial area of the city, like the 441 corridor, which is State Road 7, using funds from the Federal Community Reinvestment Act to a central sewage system. Sea level is going to continue to rise, and a solution needs to be implemented as soon as possible. For the rest of the city, it's a race against time. Virginia Torres, live from Miami Gardens.
Okay, so as you can see, our video and the group before us, we shared some of the footage, and the reason for that being is because we know that a lot of people, when they go online, they don't normally, or sometimes they won't look at both videos. So we decided to have some background information of what septic tanks are in our videos so that people can understand how sea level rise will affect septic tanks. Another important thing that we learned in this project is spending time in the community. So not just going for the sole purpose of reporting, but actually integrating with the community and taking in what the community has to offer. Since at the end of the day, we do want these citizens to direct our coverage as far as sea level rise. The whole intention behind doing how sea level rise is how sea level rise affects septic tanks is to show like a more concrete visual of how sea level rise can affect our daily lives.
Good afternoon. My name is Garfield Williams, and what we're basically doing with this project is building the community to measure our impact as journalists on the community members. We want to know that we're getting them involved, let them feel that they belong, so to speak. So the best way to do so is to use what is called a public service announcement medium, the PSA, and the purpose for the PSA that we use is to raise awareness among the community members about sea level rise and how they can become personally involved in coming up with possible solution to the potential problem that it will cause. And the PSA that you will hear in a few seconds from now will be that done by our own team member, Tony and Ferguson, and it will serve to highlight the awareness that it was meant to create in the first place. Now I turn your attention to the PSA.
Sea level rise? What's that? Many Floridians don't know that within the next 50 years, rising sea levels will increasingly flood and cause great damage in the Miami area. Join our efforts to raise awareness by visiting eyesontherise.org.
Okay, thank you for listening. Now what we plan to do with the PSA is to have it locally broadcast at a local area radio station to reach a wider audience of community members, and also to add more publicity and more, what you would call it now, notoriety to the issue of sea level rise. So that is the purpose of that. Now, what we're going to do is going to explain to you the next steps that we have in mind towards achieving this goal. And here to explain the next step expectations are our own Karina Gandelian, who will be doing that. So at this time, I present to you Karina.
Thank you, Garfield. My name is Karina Gandelian, and I would like to tell you a little bit about the plans for the future for our project. So the School of Journalism and Mass Communication is planning on teaching over 12 courses related to sea level rise starting from next semester. We also have an app which is under development right now, The app will allow you to upload the pictures with the flooded areas, and you also be able to find the indicated areas that have been already flooded. If you go on our website, eyesontherise.org, you'll be able to find the budget for our stories with the story ideas and also with the sources that the citizens will be able to update with the new information. We also are trying to measure the interest and reaction of the audience through different types of journalism. If you want to learn more information on our website and more information on the project, you can go to eyesontherise.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina and Garfield, and thank you for your time. Eyes on the Rise is committed to informing the community about sea level rise and its effects on South Florida.